my dad always says, I felt God telling me this is what should happen. And he's a pastor, and so that worked for him. So they moved to Los Angeles, where my mom's side of the family was. And so I grew up in Los Angeles, and I'm Iranian Armenian. So, born in Iran, my parents worked with Iranian refugees and, those that had converted from different backgrounds and religions to Christianity. So they had a church, and the church sponsored refugees. And so I have the Iranian piece, but ethnically I'm Armenian. And so there were the Armenian communities, the Iranian communities. And of course, I got introduced to just mainstream white culture having grown up in Los Angeles. And so I feel like I was always straddling these different worlds and being someone that's really perceptive and kind of quick, especially in the social realm. I realized how quickly different words were used or different norms were applicable in one setting versus the other. But you always think your childhood is normal until you get introduced to difference, and then you're like, oh, everyone didn't do that, everyone doesn't like this, everyone doesn't experience this. And so I really struggled. I'd say late high school and early college, biggest struggles were just understanding my emotions and really kind of running into issues in relationships, huge struggles with my parents. And so that was around the time that I was like, I don't really want to go to church. This doesn't feel like the right thing for me. Try telling that to a pastor. I'm a PK, if you know what that means. That was not something that was, you know, um, it just wasn't done. And so it caused a lot of conflict with my parents. And there was just so many different things that came out during that time that were really kind of the first times that I was thinking about my identity, my background, what I wanted from life, all those identity struggles of the 20s. And then at 24, my mom died. So my
Mm,
mom passed away at 24, and that kind of threw me obviously for another loop. I saw my dad struggle with his mental health. I struggled with my mental health. And a friend of mine, white friend, was like, you should go to therapy. And I was like, that's weird. I don't know. Like, that's a weird thing. Why would I go talk to a stranger? It's weird. It's like, yeah, it's weird. Yeah. I was like, wait a second. What's that going to help? Like all this stuff that I kind of heard. Like, why would you go talk about your family stuff outside of the family? I don't want to tell them about my dad. And then I started having big struggles with my dad and our relationship. But I tried it, and I always say it gave me this like twofold experience of I felt like it was a really intimate space, but I also felt like my therapist, who was a white dude, and I love him. Shout out to Richard, wherever you are. He was doing his postdoc. I saw him at the UCLA Counseling Center. Thank you, Richard. But I just felt like some things didn't fit. There was a lot of like, your dad's just, you're, a separate human, and whatever happens to him, that doesn't pertain to you. And I'm like, yeah, I guess at some level I understand that, but on another level, my mom's dead. I come from a collectivistic background. You're not just like, bye, dad. Like, I can't just go live my life as if that doesn't affect me at all. And so I just kind of felt like I'd leave the therapy sessions feeling like something doesn't fit, something's missing, but also like therapy is a lot better than I thought it was. And shit does change when you talk to someone. So I was having all those experiences. I was off to getting like on track to getting a PhD in sociology. And I actually made a huge shift, went into psych. I'd taken zero psych classes. I'd never even taken a Psych 101 class until my master's program. So I was getting calls from a few universities that will remain unnamed that were scouting me for their PhD programs. And I was kind of like ghosting them, just not picking up their phone. I interviewed at USC. A month and a half later, I was sitting in a marriage and family therapy master's program. So people were like, what path did you take? Can I do it? I'm like, no, you can't. Because my path was just this like, throw it at the wall, make quick decisions, trust your gut, and pivot when necessary. So, all that to say, here I am in a master's program, learning about psych, learning about mental health, feeling like, wow, I could really take this back to my community. But again, having this feeling of that doesn't fit. And wait, that not for families. And what about families of color? What about if you're poor? Did that still fit? And I felt like I was the annoying kid in a lot of my classes where they were like,
you were.
no, answer that at the end, or we've got multicultural week, and you're like, no, but I have all these questions and it doesn't seem to fit with the curriculum. It was like, learn this theory and then we'll attach culture. And I'm like, but I feel like the theory itself doesn't fit with the culture. And so I did have those disconnects, went on to get a PhD in counseling psychology, which does have some social justice roots, but again, had some of those similar experiences, and found that my fellow mostly people of color that were having some of those struggles, we kind of led each other through the grad school process. And so it wasn't until I was sitting in front of, you know, thousands of daughters of immigrants with all of my training. I probably had like 10,000 hours of training for my master's program and my
Oh, yeah.
PhD program, like years and years of hours and hours and hours, plus a 2,000-hour internship, a 2,000-hour postdoc. And I'd say 85% of that was daughters of immigrants, first gen, second gen, immigrants themselves. And I got to hear so many people like saying all of the same things that I felt, asking some of the same identity questions, struggling in the same way with their mental health. And it just felt like, wow, this is the confirmation I need. There is a whole group of people that is just feeling, especially at predominantly white universities where I'd see so many women of color in therapy, like, oh my gosh, this is a cultural thing. This is a socio-political thing. And that just got me onto figuring out the intersections between culture and mental health. So now I really specialize in working with the children of immigrants, the daughters of immigrants, creating that sense of community, creating myself as a resource, talking about the experiences I had so that other women don't feel it's like a them problem. This is a collective thing. A lot of people are trying to figure out. And I also work with intercultural couples because relationships were always, especially romantic relationships, were areas where those cultural clashes would often happen. And then the reason I picked the scene we're going to talk about later is because of the struggles I had with my immigrant parents and those immigrant kind of family clashes that happen when your parents have a different set of cultural values. So long story of really kind of not even understanding myself as a multicultural being to then hearing thousands of people kind of have some of the same inner thoughts I'd had and realizing, okay, this is a thing and it's now the only thing I do.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
I got a question. Oh, damn, I lost it. There it is. So you are the spokesperson for all immigrants in America.
Oh my gosh. No.
You speak for all immigrants. So we need to have you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. You're the
No.
immigrant number one.
Yeah,
Jesus.
I definitely feel that I've got the privilege of having heard all of those stories, but the more that I learn, the more I'm realizing we are just so incredibly diverse that there's just like every time we talk about it, there's so many more diverse pieces and nuances, and that's what keeps my work interesting.
I'm just saying, when they start looking for all the immigrants, I'm gonna point them towards you because you know them all, so they gonna get them. I'm making a political joke right now because there's so much hate for immigrants in America, in the whole world right now. Everyone hates all immigrants, even though all these nations are based off of immigrants.
Yeah. Also, a little tip and trick for anybody listening to this show. Anytime Nas starts stuttering or has that voice, it's always bullshit.
Yeah.
It's always bullshit.
When I sound like a shrimp boat captain.
Oh, no. I love shrimp. Who are you? From Michigan. Where's shrimp in Michigan?
I'm Creole.
Yeah. Creole on my Mexican side. What?
I'm a Mexican. That like shrimp. And then there's this. That was magnificent, Doc. Thank you for that introduction. Who you are. That was quite lovely. And I know there's a lot of stuff that comes with that, right? There was a lot of stuff that comes with. Thank you for the vulnerability. I wanted to make a joke, and then we're going to pivot back to Spencer doing real, actual interview skills. So. How does it feel knowing that you're a Satanist because you don't believe in religion?
Oh my God. What is that? What is that?
Don't answer that. That's a complete joke.
On this after this podcast, no immigrant Liz, Satanist Liz,
You're an immigrant Satan, apparently, according to somebody.
Immigrant Satanist is like the worst of all.
I know. And
it was my career. It was good to be, to be riding it for a while until
Well, that was, I was going to pivot this. So your career sounds fantastic until today.
Yes.
Unfortunately, after the show, it's going to completely plummet.
Correct.
Hey, it was fun while it lasted.
They're going to be looking for you after this. The reason why I make that joke is the very serious point is for a lot of these immigrant families, religion is a very important thing, whether you're a pastor's kid or not, even more so being a pastor's kid. Jesus. I work with a lot of those kids. But it's tied into a lot of the cultures. And to have that, separation or discernment out or away, just discerning in general can be seen as a sin. And so I just want to put some respect on that while having some fun with it, right? Because that's what makes people actually listen to things. And the autism kicks in. I just like to have fun. So we'll get into that in a second and how that experience shapes and stuff. I'm gonna kick it back to Spence for actual interviewing in a good way.
Yeah, no shrimp boat camped in here. So on your website, you talk about psychodynamic therapy. Can you explain what is that?
Yeah. So psychodynamic therapy, I will give its credit to kind of Freudian and Jungian roots. So caveat that there are some racist and misogynistic undertones from that. And so it needs to be adapted in order to be used. But the way I use it is that you look at some of the dynamics from childhood that might be repeating and patterns that might be repeating. And you look at that as one root of, things have to repeat in order to repair. And psychodynamic means we look at the psychological roots, the dynamics at play, and how those might be impacting your life. How you do that in a culturally informed way is that you recognize that it didn't all start in childhood and there's a context that's happening. So
Hey, thanks for watching this video. Check out the full episode on our channel and anywhere you find podcasts. Also, remember to like and subscribe. Whoop whoop!